Good afternoon, everybody, and warmly welcome Fernanda Melchor,
Thank you.
Mexican journalist and writer whose second novel, Temporada, huracanes, hurrikaanien-aika, was nominated to be Booker candidate last year. And this novel has been translated now by Emmi Ketonen and is now purely fresh in my hands. The cover showing flies and some Latin American colors and a little bit mystic atmosphere, I think. What was the starting point of this novel? How did you get this idea of the story about the witch, La Conde, who is murdered in a village called La Matasa?
What happened with hurricane season was that in 2010 I was reading the newspaper in my hometown in Veracruz. Veracruz is a city in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a tropical city. It's a very important port in Mexico. And I was reading the newspaper in the crime section, and I came into this story that there was a person in a little town outside Veracruz where they have cane sugar fields. They produce sugar in that part of the country, and in that little town surrounded by sugar fields, they found the corpse of a person who was murdered, and was horribly murdered. And the newspaper said that it was a crime. That the reason was that this person used to do witchcraft. And this person was feared by the community, and somebody had killed her because of she was a witch. Mm-hmm. And it was 2010. I knew these things, this sort of mix between Catholic religion and Santeria that came from Africa and indigenous beliefs sort of make this particularly mix of religion in Veracruz. So people believe in witchcraft. But I was amazed that in 21st century, still people and women were killed because of this, because of this idea that they were like doing supernatural harm to another person. And I was shocked. And the journalists and the police and every authority seemed to think of that as natural. And I just couldn't believe it. Not only because the story was interesting, but because of it told something really striking from the culture in Mexico and in Veracruz. And I just put it in the back of my mind for many years. And in 2015, I thought that I was ready to write a second novel. And that idea started to creep into the things I was working on. So I knew I had to write that story. At first, I thought I wanted to do like a reality novel, like in Cold Blood from Truman Capote, or like the things that Emmanuel Carrer does, like an investigation, research. But I was afraid because, as you know, in 2015, things in Mexico were very violent, organized crime, and the government were having a war. And people were being murdered in the streets. So it was journalists in Veracruz. I think that year, it was one journalist per week that was being murdered for 2 terrible years. I mean, each month we will have like 2 or 3 journalists killed. It was awful, and I was afraid for my life. And also, at that time, I didn't work for a newspaper. I didn't have any credentials. I was a housewife. I was raising my stepdaughter Hannah, and I lived in another city. I didn't have like the resources to go and do this research.
And no protection from the media.
No, I was scared, and I just had to give up, and it felt horrible because not be able to do something that you want to do because of all these reasons is depressing. It's really horrible. But then I thought that I could do something through fiction.
This, what I was thinking, reading this novel, and as we were talking before, I see Mexico as a class society in its deepest form, and I was wondering, how did you reach this voice of these people? I don't know about your background, but how did you How did you get that voice, as you are saying that you wanted to get this voice aloud? How did you manage to hear that voice?
I always have a penchant for hearing people talking. You know, like even if you come from a place where people are not readers, there's always one person who is like a master of narration. There is always one person who knows how to tell a story, and it's just, you know, like it's like watching a movie. You know, and I always was fascinated by the capacity of people of telling. So I've always been fascinated by speech. Also by literary language, no? But when you grow up in Mexico, we have a thing in Mexico that is most of books are translations, but they are translated in the Spanish from Spain. And it's very different. I mean, you can understand it, but the vocabulary and the verbal forms are totally different. So when I was growing up, I realized that there was the language of books and there was the language of people. And I always wonder, what isn't the language of people in the books? So then afterwards, I found many authors in Mexico that will do that, like José Agustín, like Carlos Fuentes, The Boom, García Márquez, José Donoso. They will do that. They will take the language of the street and elevate it to literature.
But you needed to kind of live in the street or be among these people. A little
bit. I guess I was a little bit of a troubled teenager. And I used to hang out a lot with the grown crowd of people. I spent many times of my youth just, I don't know, hanging around the parks and drinking with my friends. And they came from all social classes in general. But I think it was more of a matter of keeping my ears open to all varieties, from the lowest to the highest, you know, and being middle class, I had like the possibility of, I studied, for example, my elementary school was in a private school, was a Montessori school, and it was a very expensive school. We had the opportunity to go there, and I met people who, you know, they had a pool in their house, or I don't know, they were really millionaires.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I had friends who their mothers used to do. They were the house cleaning ladies, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
So I get to be in the middle. Like I got to see like every
different worlds. Yeah.
Different in the spectrum of social classes. I got to see everything.
Yeah, because many times it happens that you just stay in your bubble, but
that's it. But you know, as growing up in Mexico in the 90s, it was impossible to stay in one bubble.
Yes.
Because the economic crisis was like, maybe you thought you were middle class and then you realized. And my dad, there was a time when he was, you know, up to here to credit card debt in the 90s. And a friend of him committed suicide because he couldn't pay anymore. No, it was terrible. And so many people just suddenly...
we have lived a little bit same in 90s.
Of course.
Yes. Okay, let's go to the book. Some of your main characters are homosexuals in the story. How do you see their situation now in Mexico in 2021?
You see, in Veracruz, there's always been like I don't know if tolerance is the appropriate word, but in Veracruz, these sort of queer identities are more accepted than in other parts of Mexico. I don't know why it is. I think it has to do something with the culture, the particular culture in Veracruz. It has to do maybe with it being a port, that it's open to different sort of influences. I don't know why. But in Veracruz, since many years ago, you can assume yourself as a trans person, and people will normally respect that decision. That doesn't mean that there isn't any transphobia or homophobia. Mainly, I think I've been always fascinated by dissidents. You know, like I wanted to portray what it is like for a person to be afraid of its own desires. So I think the topic in hurricane season, homophobia, it's just the fear, the interiorized fear in a person of one's most deep desires. You have a character like Brando, who is a very homophobic young man, but at the same time he feels desire for his best friend, and that's a huge conflict in him. And I was very interested in that sort of conflict, more than in portraying a certain way of how society thinks about homosexuality, and about misogyny too. In a certain way, I only was trying to reflect what I saw growing up. I grew up middle class, but even then, there was always a different way of educating women and men.
This is what is striking in
Girls
your novel.
and boys, always.
Yeah.
You know, like I was supposed to do the dishes because I was a girl. And growing up, let me tell you, the idea of being a girl wasn't very attractive to me because, I don't know, every character of the books I read, interesting, there were men. And every writer I saw, like everywhere, there were men, you know, like white men.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it seemed like being a woman wasn't a very desirable fate for me, a very desirable destiny. But then I came into terms with it, of course, and now it's very different in Mexico. There's more conscience, there's awareness, and young girls are like, you know, like becoming activists, feminists. But at the same time, what we have in Mexico is different kind of Mexico all the time. So we're not talking about one society that needs to change. It's a huge country with different regions. And it is not the same being an indigenous woman in Oaxaca, for example, that being a professionist in Ciudad de Mexico or being a dentist in Sinaloa. I don't know. It's really very different.
Yeah.
So,
but the world you are describing here, now we are interested in this. In this world, I would like to know if you can see any change coming. In this particular world, I think people are just trying to survive in any capacity they can. Even a woman like Chabela, for example, that used to be exploited as a prostitute, she instead of realizing that she's been exploited, she decides to exploit other women. You know, it's like all these people have they have become, they've been a slave. And when they have the possibility of escape, they become the master of new slaves. You know, it's like they repeat the gesture of the master. They repeat the gesture of the torturer. So they're in a circle. Yes.
They're in a vicious circle. It's a novel I wrote when I was in a very desperate place, in a very desperate state of mind. Very saddened and very worried about the situation in Mexico, the situation of Mexican women, the situation of Mexican trans people, the situation of Mexican young people in general. I mean, it is not so much, I'm not against young men. I mean, I think that this chauvinistic reality also crushes them with the expectations, terrible expectations of masculinity that are unachievable. You know?
This is what I was thinking about when I'm thinking of the character of La Conde, if he's homosexual in this particular village and this society, where the models of being a woman and a man are very limited. That you have to be like this and you have to be like this. And being a homosexual, do you have any other option than become a freak? Okay, I'm a witch. Like, what is the space that kind of person can move?
Of course. I just that character was. Sometimes people ask me why I didn't give her a voice. Why everybody talks about her, but she doesn't talk. She says something in the middle or something, but we don't get to know her from inside. And I wanted to leave her as a mystery, you know, because I wanted to construct her step by step. I was so intrigued about this, and it's totally invented, you know. The original witch that was killed wasn't anything like the witch in hurricane season. I wanted to create a character that represents everything that men fear in women, you know. This is a woman who's, you know, like she's so powerful. She has power over life and death in that small village. She's rich. She has money, you know. She may not possess like typical beauty, but she's attractive in a certain way. She's fascinating, and she provokes every man around her, and she arouses them, and it's unbearable for men.
One element, one very visible element in the novel is the superstitious culture. What is your you were describing it at the first, like that for you it was a surprise that how come we are in this year and still people believe in these things. What do you think? What part of this has affected you in your daily life?
I did this sort of beliefs,
superstitious culture.
Yeah, I mean it was everywhere around when I was growing up. For example, when I was a baby, I sometimes had a fever, and they thought they would have given me the evil eye, because in Mexico it's believed that when you say, "Oh, what a beautiful child," but you don't touch it, you make them sick. I don't know why. It's just, or they believe that disease comes from the air. Sometimes you will be like this, and a bad air will come and they will sicken you. I don't know. People believe in that sort of stuff. In my family, it's weird because my mother is from Mexico City, and they don't really have that going on, and my father is from the north of Mexico, and they don't also. So I was always in a place where my family weren't really believers. They were Catholic, normal, but like religion, like going to church on Sundays, and that's it. But I didn't get to see like the craziest parts of this Veracruzanian religion. For example, people believe in satanic possession. They will believe, and they will have rituals for exorcising evil spirits. They will really believe that. Or they will really believe that they will need to have amulets in business. For example, if you have a restaurant, you need to have a special amulet, so it brings you luck. Or there's lots of them. If you want a man to fall in love with you, you go and do a special with a witch or with
What for instance? You have
I don't know. They call it amarre. It means tying. So you tie yourself to this man, and he cannot forget you, and he cannot stop thinking about you, and he falls in love, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not really superstitious. I'm only superstitious because I'm a writer, and writers, we are very superstitious.
Yeah, but you're familiar with this world.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I have my last question, and it's about thinking of Latin American literature in general, and what we know here, what is translated in Finnish. For me, this novel is somehow related with 100 años de soledad, 100 Years of Solitude with Garcia Marquez. You see this connection yourself?
No, of course. I grew up reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I grew up reading Isabel Allende. I mean, I think the writers of what they call in the 60s the Latin American boom, when Latin American writers arrived to the international literary scene and began to be known, and Garcia Marquez won the Nobel Prize. I mean, Carlos Fuentes then, and writers like José Donoso, Manuel Puig, Cortázar, lots of writers began to be translated. They began to be famous. Of course, I read them, and I think they do certainly had an effect on me, because for the first time I saw that it was possible to write in our own, particularly Latin American Spanishes, for example, and that we could write about our own worlds. I mean, 100 años de soledad, it's a fable. It is not reality, but at the same time it has lots of elements of Colombian, Caribbean reality, and I do feel the influence of the boom. I know that writers from a generation before me will deny absolutely the influence of the boom. I think it happens like that with literary generations, that you always try to deny the influence of the one that precedes you. But in my case, I totally accept that. Gabriel Garcia Marquez helped me a lot to find that sort of narrator that's like a voice that's inside and outside at the same time, and that can travel to the past and to the present with ease, and that can explore like the deepest secrets of a person, and at the same time sometimes project itself and look at everything like a bird from the sky. So that's basically the narrator, not of 100 Years of Solitude, but the autumns, the patriarch's autumn.
Yeah.
The autumns of the patriarch. I don't know how. That's mainly. When I read that book, I said, this is the voice I was looking for.
And of course, there's this parallel of like that it's a remote village and people are living like a little bit like primitive way, and so there is a kind of relation.
I was never interested in doing magic realism, but I was doing more like realistic horror, like taking elements of reality and using them in a way that provokes feelings in the reader. That's why this is an awkward book. It is sometimes I think it is not a book for everyone. If you only like to read books because they suit you or relax you, this is not the book for you probably, because the intention is always to put yourself in the skin of people who in real life you wouldn't want to meet, never. You wouldn't want to be with them, never, or live the lives they live. That was the intention, but I think that's what literature is for in a way, to make us be in the skin of people we will never be.
Yes.
And sometimes maybe find in them something that reflects in us and makes us think, wow. Sometimes I think that too. Wow, what's going on, right? I mean.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Fernanda. We have to
Thank
finish
you,
now. Thank you. And thank you for all of you be here.